you cannot, per the CBA, waive fines on a veteran player. Only with a rookie contract can you waive fines as your team. I assume they're giving him a bonus for the fines missed. If this is just an incentive deal, unless their incentive is show up and tie your shoe, I don't get it.
You're tuned in to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, guiding your gridiron journey, none other than your host, former NFL lineman, Ross Tucker.
Oh, yeah, it is. But it's not just any Ross Tucker Football Podcast. It is a Wisdom Wednesday presented, of course, by DraftKings, with the wisdom coming from our guy, Andrew Brandt, the former NFL executive and co-host of the Business of Sports podcast, actually solo host of the Business of Sports podcast. Yes, I forgot the winners again. At this point, you guys are all winners. I'm the loser. At Ross Tucker Pod on social media. Love those of you that take advantage of any of our sponsors, especially Game Time and West Shore Home. You'll hear more about them a little bit later. YouTube.com/Ross Tucker NFL. Big news. Right when we started recording, I just saw the Schefter tweet about the DeAndre Hopkins trade to the Chiefs. We'll get to that momentarily. But first, Andrew is going to be presented by Labatt Blue Light. I love me some Labatt Blue Light. I love living life to the power of we. I love enjoying it responsibly. I love beer. I love Labatt USA. And I do love Buffalo, New York. Big Show time.
The Big Show.
Well, we don't get a chance to do it every week, but it still wasn't that long ago that we did one of our patented Business of Sports podcast, Ross Tucker Football Podcast, simulcast, if you will. And the reason is really simple. There's a lot going on. There's a lot going on kind of off the field in the business of football. Plus, I saw Andrew Brandt on the field, like the field, Lambeau Field, with his son. So had to get together with him, connect, and come on each other's shows. I think most of the Ross Tucker Football Podcast listeners know Andrew does the Business of Sports podcast pretty much every week. As far as I know, it's the best Business of Sports podcast out there. He's been doing it for a long, long time now. Former executive in the NFL, former Barcelona Dragons GM. He was an agent before then. Then he was obviously in the Packers front office for a long time. Now he does all kinds of media stuff and teaching and whatever. I'm just a former NFL offensive lineman trying to avoid a real job as long as I possibly can and get your expertise, Andrew. But before we get into Hassan Reddick and Devontae Adams and all that stuff, you know, I thought, I was thinking about getting you on. Then I saw the picture of you and your older son at Lambeau Field, and I thought, oh, I got to get him on. I got to hear about the trip. Tell me about the trip to Green Bay. It's always cool, especially you spent so much time there. That's like your team.
Yeah, it was great, Ross. You know, and the fact we're doing this again is great. We should do it more often. The simulcast, listeners of mine, listeners of yours, we get together and bring it all together. Former player, former executive, on the field, off the field. Hope everyone enjoys this. You know, Ross, a couple months ago, I got a request from something called the Madison Sports Commission to do a speaking engagement with them. And I said, I'd love to. It was a good organization, everything I wanted to do, hear about my life and my stories from the Packers. I said, here's my only proviso. You've got to coordinate it with a Packers game that I can come out and see. Because if I'm going to go to Wisconsin, I want to see it on a Packers weekend. So I did, and we scheduled it around this Houston game. I thought, you know, late October, you never know, and they're going to do the winter whiteout, and it's going to be cold. But Ross, I swear to God, it was 80 degrees in Green Bay, Wisconsin, and they played. It's really nice to see so many old friends that I'd worked with. Again, I was there 9 years. I'm talking to people that have been there 26, 28, 30, 32, 35 years. And as Saturday night, we get in, we go to dinner at the spot that I always went to when I was there. And who's at the next table, Ross? Brian Gutekunst. So we had a great chat all about the team, all about the philosophy that goes way back, draft and develop, never do anything sexy, no quick fixes, build the roster, have all these young receivers after they got rid of Devontae. Anyway, It was a great experience to bring my son. And we're all still Packer fans. You know, they grew up there. That's our team. I live in Philly now. Philly's kind of number two. They're number two, but it's Green Bay all the way. It's just great to experience that coming back to a place that you spent a lot of time in. And the last thing I'll say is when I started there, Ross, in 1999, it was just an annex. It was a high school field. It was a lower bowl. Oh my God. I mean, it is just Lambeau is everywhere. There's Titletown. There's all these tech places now. The condo developments. You know, it's like it's no longer living in the Lombardi era in Green Bay as it was back in the 2000s.
Was Gutekunst there when you were there?
Yeah,
Andrew?
a scout, Ross. He was an area scout, not living in Green Bay, and we talked about that. He moved to Green Bay, I think, in 2015. And he was really reluctant to do it, you know, but he did, and it paid off. And now he loves. He's got kids and everything. I met the whole family, but yeah, it's the tradition. Wolf tutored and tutored Thompson, who tutored Gutekunst. You know, that's the way of the Packers.
Well, the way of the Jets
Yeah,
is
a little different.
is a little bit different. They like splashes. They like making moves. The one this week is interesting. Hassan Reddick is evidently back with the team on a reworked deal. You know, the details of which are still, I
Yeah.
would describe, Andrew, as scant. There were some reports out there that they had waived the fines. We know you're not allowed to do that. So there's other reports that, oh no, they gave him easy incentives to make up for the fines. He has a new agent. At any rate, it looks like Hassan Reddick will be playing ball for the rest of the year.
I don't know what they did either. Yeah, like you said, it's sketchy. And, you know, with Drew Rosenhaus, usually learn these things in the media pretty quick because he's known to tell big bonuses and things like that. But we don't have that here. Listen, if I was representing him, I always said, we talked about this last time we were together, do not hold out from real money. Off-season, preseason, even if it's fines, okay. But once the checks start and his check is $800,000 a week, I can't justify it. I'm guessing CAA, his former agent, told him that. He said no, they had parting of ways, whether it was mutual or Hassan Reddick firing him. But anyway, Drew gets in there and they've got a deal. Now, you said it right. You cannot, per the CBA, waive fines on a veteran player. Only with a rookie contract can you waive fines as your team, like a CD Lamb. But this situation is, I assume they're giving him a bonus for the fines missed and incentives for the games missed, and that millions of dollars there. If this is just an incentive deal, unless their incentive is show up and tie your shoe, I don't get it. I still don't. It's confounding. It's head scratching how he gave up close to $12 million. And if he's only getting back incentives, so if he gets hurt, he's down $12 million to come back. I don't get that either. We're going to find out more, Ross. And I just think it's probably going to be a combo. Some money that's paid. Of course, they had to take the fine. So are they giving him the fine money back, or does he have to, quote unquote, earn it back? It's a curious move from the beginning. The Reddick situation's been curious.
You know, when the Jets made the trade for Devontae Adams, Andrew, my initial thought was, and they said his hamstring's fine and he's going to be playing against the Steelers. And of course he did. My initial thought was Devontae Adams, the first thing he should do is teach Hassan Reddick how to hurt your hamstring. And people not watching us, youtube.com/Ross Tucker NFL can't see that I made the quotation marks. How to hurt your hamstring and not lose $12 million.
Yeah. I mean, hold in worked. Another receiver we haven't talked about in a while, Brandon Ayuk. I don't think he had leverage coming to camp, but he came to camp. He got his deal, got a huge deal, and now he's hurt for the year, but he's secure. Yeah, Devontae Adams' hamstring got better in New York. I tweeted, Ross, that what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. His hurt hamstring stayed in Vegas. Yeah, I mean, it's like this is the new way, right? I don't understand if Reddick and his agents are seeing this out there with to some extent, Jordan Love and Tua and Ayuk and Adams getting what they want through this half-hearted way in camp. Why didn't he do that? Why didn't he just collect the money? Let me just comment quickly on Adams. Again, this is a former Packer reunited with Aaron and with Alan Lazard. And it just seems to me like just what I said. The Packers are slow and steady, draft and develop. The Jets are quick fix. And they're 2-5. Now, you know better than I do. They have this cake schedule. They may still be a playoff team, but I try to tell people all the time, the sexy signings usually are for players whose best days are behind them. So I'm at this Packers game the other day watching all these players that are low round picks being paid peanuts, performing as well as Adams has been performing. So again, two different philosophies.
What did you think of the Adams trade, compare and contrast to like Amari Cooper's trade to Buffalo? Kind of wild, even a few weeks out from the trade deadline, that they both get traded the same day within a couple hours of each other for very similar compensation.
Similar but different. And here's what I want to say. Yes, it's a third round pick, and people like you are much more skilled, and Greg Cosell, of comparing the two players. That's not my forte. But I look at it on the business side. And this is what I'm going to say now is that the Amari Cooper trade for the Bills was heads and tails better than the Adams trade for the Jets, because you cannot ignore the money. Adams, they inherited $11 million plus on that contract. Cooper, the Bills inherited minimum salary, $800,000. So let's be clear. The Bills are paying less the Bills are paying less for the whole season than the Jets are paying Adams for 1 week. That's extraordinary. To get Amari Cooper for minimum, I know he doesn't have a contract next year, but you've got $11 million to play with compared to the Jets. So not all third round trades are created equal. And what's happened with the Jets is they've inherited this big number, and then they have these blow up numbers the next 2 years, which basically gives Adams leverage because, hey, you're going to cut him after just acquiring him for a third round pick? Amari Cooper, $800,000, that's a no brainer. And the reason he has that is because the Cleveland Browns, who we'll talk about in a second, do these things with contracts where they bonus out all but the minimum salary in order to create present cap room. It's their strategy. It's what they've done with so many contracts. And it really benefited the Buffalo Bills.
Well, and on some level, I guess it benefited the Browns, right? Because they got a better draft choice probably because the Bills knew that it was the minimum. So on some level, that Brown strategy also enabled them to get a third for Cooper when otherwise maybe they would not have.
I think that's a good point. And that's exactly my point. When you look at trades, all the people listening, you can't just evaluate trade compensation. You have to evaluate financial compensation. Because when I'm talking about when team executives do this, that's what they're talking about. And yes, the Bills probably said, if this was a $10 million player, we'd offer a fourth or a fifth or sixth round pick. But for $800,000, a third rounder is a great deal, great value.
Speaking of the Browns,
yeah,
Deshaun Watson, done for the year again. This time it's a torn Achilles. This is the third year of his 5-year fully guaranteed deal. He still has 2 more years after this. Who knows? I mean, he's been horrible this year, even as a player. Now he's going to be coming off of a torn Achilles. I guess what options, if any, do the Browns have now, Andrew?
I feel you asking, Ross, for all Browns fans out there. Just give us hope, Andrew Brandt. Give us hope. I don't see it. This is a rock solid, fully secured, guaranteed deal. People ask about injury guarantees. He doesn't need an injury guarantee. He's got a full guarantee, which is better than an injury guarantee. So no matter how long he's out with the Achilles, people ask about, cutting him. They can't cut him. The cap impact would be way too big. So what about putting him down and just paying him? Well, this is what happened to him in Houston. Remember? In Houston, they told him, go home, sit around, catch your check after all was going on with the massage therapist, and we'll pay you to just stay away. Could we see that happen again? We see this year he's rehabbing, but could we see next year they pay him $46 million to stay home? Because that contract's untradeable, because it's the same cap effect if you trade him or cut him. The contract is uncuttable. It's really a situation. Now, insurance, people ask. Well, most insurance is PTD, permanent total disability. An Achilles rupture is not a permanent total disability. Now, could there be some temporary total disability over a deductible for games played that beyond a certain amount? I suppose. But I think Browns fans are just kind of grasping at straws that maybe, yes, maybe you get a few $1 million of cap room back on an insurance policy in 2026 or something like that. But it's, Ross, I've said it so many times, there's no player for whom a team is more all in on, trade compensation wise and financially, than Deshaun Watson. And he's been a horrible player. I mean,
and yet, Andrew, what's remarkable about it to me, and I'm actually doing their game for CBS on Sunday. They host the Ravens Sunday at 1. On some level, I don't know what the right word is, but it had become a very uncomfortable situation with him as the starting quarterback performing poorly, how the home fans felt about him and how he was performing, the desire to see someone else in there at quarterback. On some level, I'm not going to say that the Browns are happy that he got injured, but I will say that he relieved Kevin Stefanski the injury relieved Kevin Stefanski of having to make a gigantic decision that he clearly didn't want to have to make.
Let's just review the Watson sweepstakes in 2022. He's a Southern kid. It was in my sources around the business of sports were telling me Saints, Panthers, or Falcons, probably Falcons or Saints. That was the rumor so long. Cleveland was out. They were out. And then I saw the news from Schefter, Rappaport, the same as everyone else did, and I was shocked. Browns? And then I saw why. To get Deshaun Watson through that auction, and that's what I call it with those 3 other teams, they did this. Now, we haven't even talked about the side issues of conduct, but if I'm putting myself in a room with Kevin Stefanski and the owner and Andrew Barry, the GM, I guess this is the conversation, Ross, and you tell me. It's like, listen, you can't get these guys. You have to be a number 1, 2, or 3 draft pick, or they never get to free agency ever. Let's do it. I mean, I don't know if that was the conversation, but to me, this is a franchise-defining decision that, as you said, has only gone south. And I'm trying to put myself in the room 2 years ago.
Speaking of quarterbacks, I did want to get your thoughts on Tua Tagovailoa.
Yeah.
Looks like he's going to start this week for the Dolphins. He had some really strong comments about it being his life, comparing football players to boxers, hockey players, saying, I love it and I love it to the death of me. I don't know if there's a contract or business of sports question in there, Andrew, other than I guess I'm curious as to what the Dolphins are thinking. I guess they're happy he's playing. He's a better player, and they need to. I would love to know what insurance they have against him getting another concussion, at this point and stopping his career. Although you would have thought that would have been a factor before this thing even started.
I'm not surprised he is continuing to play. I never believed the retirement talk. I know that was a conversation among media and fans immediately after that last concussion, of course. And rightly, the Dolphins put him on IR when he was feeling good, right? He was feeling good a day or two or a week later, but he hasn't played since the second week of the season. So they gave him all this time. My sense is he talked to doctors and people close to him. You know better than I do. There are some that would say, walk away, our friend Chris Nowinski. But there are others that would say, no, your risk is your risk, and you can manage the risk. He's 26 years old. He had the best year of his career last year. He just signed a massive new contract. Do we really think he was going to retire? It's fine for us in our 40s, 50s, 60s to say he should retire, but I never thought that would happen. How many of us in their 20s are worried about how we're going to feel in our 50s? And I think we all are concerned, but at the end of the day, it's his life. And I think the Dolphins are supportive. I really do. I don't think the Dolphins are saying, hey, you should retire. I think the Dolphins are, this is your decision. And we're committed to you if you want to play. Yeah, back to the question on insurance. Probably some insurance, but if you're getting insurance on this new contract, Ross, on a guy that's had 4 concussions, I think it's going to be hard to get a lot of payouts for a concussion. If it's PTD again, that's a different story, but it's obviously not because he's coming back.
Last thing, Andrew, the World Series will be kicking off. Dodgers, Yankees. It's Major League Baseball's dream from a TV rating standpoint, but maybe a nightmare from a competitive balance standpoint?
It's a no-cap league. As everyone knows, Major League Baseball, the only league among major professional sports without a cap, and it shows. You have the 2 of the 3 highest payrolls in Major League Baseball, the 2 big markets, the Yankees and Dodgers. The Mets, who were just lost to the Dodgers, were the top payroll. And it's going according to plan if you believe in spending equals winning. Listen, there are teams in baseball that rise up now and then, whether it's the Rays, whether it's the Guardians, whether it's the Tigers. But that is not sustainable in baseball. It's not. Because in a no-cap system, you have teams paying $300 million in player payroll. There are now 6 teams under $100 million in payroll. How do they compete? How are you supposed to compete? Let's go to the NFL, the cap league. Ross, the difference between high and low spending teams is about $70 million. That is a third of the difference in baseball. It's $210 million. So what I'm pointing out here is the NFL does not rely on the spending equals winning formula that baseball has. And of course, you have small market teams like Green Bay, like Kansas City, like Buffalo, doing so well. The only reason Green Bay survives are 2 reasons: revenue sharing and salary cap, and Buffalo and Kansas City, because otherwise you'd have New York and LA in the Super Bowl every year like you are in baseball. So I appreciate you asking, because I wanted to point out the vast difference in a cap sport like the NFL and a no cap sport like baseball.
Check him out on social media at Andrew Brandt. I'm at Ross Tucker NFL for the Business of Sports listeners. Of course, you can check out any of the shows on the network at Ross Tucker Pod. Highly encourage anyone, if you're not already subscribing to the Business of Sports, please do so. And if you're a Business of Sports listener, certainly check out the Ross Tucker Football Podcast and our other podcasts. We got a fantasy, a betting, a college one, whatever you're into. Andrew, always great to connect. Perfect timing. As always, glad you had an awesome trip. Thank you, man.
Always great when we do this. Thanks, Ross.
All right, so Jack, before we get to the D-Hop news, I got even bigger news. My friends over at westshorehome.com/Ross have the most ridiculous deal I've ever seen. 72 months, 0% interest with up to $1,500 off. How good is this deal? So good that I'm doing it. Again, I've already gotten 2 of the upstairs bathtub shower things turned into showers, which are amazing. I got the front door done. Now I'm getting a couple more doors done, especially the door to my detached garage where my studio is. The thing is like, I don't know if it's rotting or what. Anyway, I'm going to have a beautiful brand new door thanks to these guys with no interest until 2030. Make sure you check out westshorehome.com/Ross to see the before and after pictures of even this next project which is going down in November. WestShoreHome.com/Ross. Absolutely no I in football, and Smirnoff knows that. It's a we thing. We experience it together. Tailgates, watching at a friend's house. Smirnoff's the world's #1 vodka, official vodka partner in the NFL, and they're giving fans in select areas of the country a chance to win the ultimate game day experience, from tickets to sideline passes and so much more. Just head to WeDoGameDays.com until November 15th to enter for your chance to win. Smirnoff, We Do Game Days. Please drink responsibly. Smirnoff number 21 vodka, distilled from grain, 40% alcohol by volume. The Smirnoff Company, New York, New York. Please do not share with anyone under legal drinking age. No purchase necessary. 21 plus. End 11/15/24. See rules at website for participating area and other important details. Sponsored by Diageo Americas Incorporated, New York, New York.
Tuck's Takes.
All right, Ross, as you mentioned earlier, the Titans are trading DeAndre Hopkins to the Chiefs. The return is a 5th rounder that can get up to a 4th round pick.
Really makes sense for both teams, right? You know, for the Titans, they are not going anywhere this year. They need to start to think about their future and trying to get more picks to probably get up and get a different quarterback, but also just get some more talent on the roster. And Hopkins, at his age, is not going to be around probably for when the Titans turn it around. And the Chiefs, obviously the time is now. They have a truly unique opportunity to win a 3rd straight Super Bowl. They're not good enough outside at receiver. This will certainly help.
And we've got some business, some contractual news. The Saints, they signed Alvin Kamara to a 2-year extension, while the Rams, they're shopping Cooper Kupp in trades.
Well, for Kamara, that's good news. You know, I mean, it just seems like he's been such a good Saint for such a long time. And I'm glad to see that he'll stay there. There's like a resurgence of these running backs. Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley, Alvin Kamara. It's been pretty darn impressive. Meanwhile, the Cooper Kupp news is interesting because they play tomorrow night. He's coming back from injury tomorrow night. I mean, like, if you're Cooper Kupp, you sure you want to, come back from injury tomorrow night and push that thing? Maybe wait another 10 days and make sure you're super duper healthy before doing that for a team looking to trade you? Other than that, I think we're done here.
Thanks for tuning in to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. Make sure to also check out Even Money, Fantasy Feast, and College Draft, all on the DraftKings Network on Samsung TV Plus, YouTube, or subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform.
Shout out myfrontpagestory.com. You guys know I love me some myfrontpagestory.com. Have you even looked at it? Have you even gone to the website and just seen how cool these things are and seen on social media the smiles from the people after they get these incredible stories? Shows somebody how much you truly care about them. myfrontpagestory.com, backoffescheduler.com, humanheadnyc.com, Sporticulture, Pizza Boy Brewing.